Hello everyone, my name is Lily Scaife. I'm a student at the Langley Academy. I'd like to welcome you all to this TVLP event. We're very lucky to have two speakers with us today from the Royal Life Saving Society. We're here to talk about water safety. We're coming into the summer holidays and maybe having days out by the water, so we wanted this event to happen before we break up. This topic is very important to me because my brother Michael drowned in the Jubilee River in 2015. You may think rivers are calm, safe places, but as me and my family learnt, there are lots of hidden dangers. If you have any questions for the speakers throughout the event, please use the Q&A option at the bottom of your screen and we will choose a selection of these at the end.
Yeah, brilliant. Okay, so hello everyone. So my name is Bhavik Brocha and I'm joined by my colleague Nick Hanley here, and we're both from the Royal Life Saving Society. Firstly, we want to say a massive thank you to everyone for coming along and listening to us speak today. We hope that you find some of this stuff really useful, and we want to say a big thank you to Lily as well for helping organize all of this from kind of the grassroots. She got in contact with us and really spearheaded this whole process. So it's really fantastic to see that she's so passionate about the topic. Well, we're from the Royal Life Saving Society, and the Royal Life Saving Society was established in 1891. So we're a really old society. We've been involved in water safety and drowning prevention for a really long time. And the main kind of goals of our society is to make water safe and enjoyable for everyone. And this can be done through a number of ways, but we have loads and loads of lifeguards. Most of you have probably been to local swimming pools or beaches, and you would have seen lifeguards on duty and all sorts of water safety equipment. And the Royal Life Saving Society has been really important in getting all of this set up and making all these different places safe for people to be involved in the water and the water around us. So I'm going to talk a little bit about water safety and drowning prevention, kind of a little bit about how you can stay safe around the water, and also things to do in the event of an emergency. And then Nick's going to talk a little bit about how to get involved a little bit more with the society, and actually what you can actually do to get involved if you find anything really exciting or interesting based on what we do. So a little introduction to drowning and cold water. So about 700 people every year drown within the UK and Ireland. So that's a huge number of people which could have been prevented from drowning. And that could be from rivers, lakes, swimming pools, and even the sea itself. And actually thousands and thousands of people have lots of non-fatal incidents. So these are incidents where people might get injured, or they may actually end up in hospital. And these are all things that we want to try and avoid. So the question I ask you is, what do you know about drowning? So most of us have been swimming, or we've at least had some interaction with water, but really what causes drowning, and how many people which people end up drowning? So firstly, who drowns? So you might be surprised by these numbers, but actually we would have thought that as you get older, you become a little bit weaker, and therefore you're maybe less able to swim as effectively. But the reality is that actually it's between the ages of 15 and 25 where most people drown. And that's a really scary number, because most of you would be falling in that age category or close to that age category. And that's something that we want to try and avoid and prevent in the future. And the reason we think that most people between the ages of 15 and 25 drown is because they end up in different situations that they're not necessarily comfortable with, or they haven't been exposed to in the past, and they don't know is dangerous. And that's what causes that drowning incident. So what's really also staggering is that the majority of people who drown are males. So boys, you are more likely to drown than the girls. And we don't understand exactly why that is, but often it's to do with people taking more risks. And it seems that that is the statistics that go forward from there. So a couple of case studies, which people actually quite young have drowned, and this is very, very recently. So Richard Fellows, he was just swimming with friends in a country park. He was just kind of going along about his day, and it was a non-lifeguarded or non-patrolled area that he was swimming in. And sadly, He drowned and no one found him for about 2 hours. And that was something that could have been completely prevented if he was swimming in a place which was safe to swim. And likewise, Dylan Ramsey was 13 at the time, and he drowned at a quarry in Lancashire. And this is another drowning which could have been prevented if he was swimming in a location which is considered safe to swim, like a pool or like a lifeguarded beach or lake. So I've been talking about drowning, and what it is kind of a wide variety of things. And that's something to bear in mind when we think about it. So most of you hopefully would be able to swim, or at least have some ability to swim or have an exposure to the pool. Maybe that's through school swimming lessons or through a variety of other activities. And most of us think we're strong swimmers. Like, I like to think I'm quite a good swimmer. But there's a lot of things that could present as dangerous where we don't necessarily think about them as so. For example, when we're swimming in rivers, there are a variety of different dangers that we don't think about, like the current, like the depth, but also things like debris, like weeds growing under the water, and a variety of other sharp objects and things which could really injure us and prevent us from swimming as well as we would be able to. And likewise with lakes, quarries, and beaches. Beaches can be particularly hazardous because the sea is quite a rough, dangerous place, especially as you go further out. And we want to try and avoid those dangers when we go to the beach. But the biggest killer, which surprises a lot of people, is actually cold water. In England, we don't get as much sunshine as we do in the Caribbean. And often we find that the cold water is something that can shock people and can be a real hazard in terms of safety and when you're swimming. So waters and rivers and lakes, I'm going to give you a bit of a geography lesson here, in England is roughly around about 15 degrees. So swimming pools, for a comparison, about 30 degrees. So we're talking half the temperature of a swimming pool. Half the time when you go to the pools, you often dip your toe in and find that it's a bit cold. Now imagine that, but half the temperature. And what we find is that the shallows get warm in the sun, and in the deeper waters, we find that it stays very cold, and that's all year round. So we want to avoid swimming in cold water. And if you jump in from things like a bridge or a cliff, the effect of cold water can get you straight away. Have you ever had that feeling where you knock the breath out of you as you fall in the water or jump in the water? And that's exactly what happens, especially in cold water. Your body reacts by panicking a little bit, and you can find yourself out of your depth very quickly and not able to breathe. So I've got a very short video here, which actually explains the effects of cold water and drowning. And we will then move on to how to stay safe in and around the water.
So the first thing that happens is gasping. And then hyperventilation. So you have and then you have rapid breathing after that. And so those effects last 30 seconds, maybe a minute for some people. But what's important is keep your head above water as much as you can, because if you gasp when your head's underwater, you actually can inhale more than a liter of water in the first gasp. And if you do that, then you'll drown. Do not panic. The psychological stress can actually feed the hyperventilation. So you just breathe uncontrollably, indefinitely. You can actually faint if you hyperventilate enough. And of course, if you're out there without a life jacket on, fainting means that you'll die. The cardiac effect, when you jump into cold water, you might increase blood pressure and heart rate. And increasing the stress can cause cardiac arrest. This really only happens if in people who have underlying heart disease.
So the cold water can be very dangerous. And when it first hits you, remember we saw that they were gasping. You have something called hyperventilation. This is when you start breathing very quickly, and that can cause you to become dizzy or panic. And if you breathe too deeply, you can breathe in some water, and that will also cause you to drown. And this increased blood pressure, especially as people get older, you may notice, like if you notice someone's dad or someone jumping in to the water, it could actually increase their chance of a heart attack when they jump into cold water. So After the gasping and the muscle cooling, often we find that our breathing can come under control, but there's a few other issues to worry about.
We saw that a bit earlier, and we're going to see that quite a bit later on in our next set of swimming, right? So and it's all about just the effect of cold on muscle and nerve cells, right? Muscle cells do the action, nerve cells send the signal. You make either of those cold, and you're not going to be able to perform. It's pretty, the physiology is complicated, but the principle is simple. We did another interesting comparison today. We took Ryan and Chris and Alice out, and Chris and Alice wore life jackets and Ryan didn't, and they kind of swam together.
Ryan started off stronger than his first swim, with Alice and Chris in their life jackets following closely behind. But after a short time, it became obvious that Ryan was weakening rapidly, and he was rescued from the 6-degree water. Alice was still floating, but unable to go any further and gladly returned to the boats. However, the point was made that with flotation, she would have been able to survive much longer through to unconsciousness from hypothermia and eventual rescue. Chuck and Jonah and Ashanti.
So that tells you that the possibility of you being able to swim as effectively after hitting cold water is a lot harder. It's a lot harder to swim, and it's a lot harder to keep your wits about you and actually get yourself to safety. So if you end up going kayaking or canoeing this summer, we really, really wish you wear a life jacket. Even if they don't necessarily give you one initially, I would suggest strongly asking for one. It can save your life, absolutely. But we don't want to scare you from the water. That's one really important thing to bear in mind. There's a lot of fun things you can do in the water. I love canoeing and kayaking. I go every summer, and I'm sure you guys would all be interacting with the water, even if it's just going to the beach or going to the river or just going and walking along the river. And all of these things can be done really safely if you do it in the right way. So head to a lifeguarded beach or lake. Try and go for a walk along the river where you know that you're going to be safe, you're not going to fall in, or it's not going to be on unstable banks. And if you want to do something extreme or something a little bit more like out there are ways of doing it, but we say do it with a group or do it with a set up organization which have all the safety equipment and all the skills and practices to help keep you safe in the water. And that's really important, especially for this summer where lots of you may end up finding yourself around the water as it gets warmer. And if you're going to the coast and the beach, we really, really suggest that you are careful and know what to do in the event of an emergency. So most beaches now in the UK are at least lifeguarded in certain areas. And we suggest strongly that you go to these lifeguarded beaches if you intend on swimming or going out into the water. The beaches and the coastlines change all the time. As most of you may know, they have tides that come in and out, and understanding how these environments work makes it easier to enjoy, but also stay safe. And in the event of an emergency, you need to stop, you need to think, stay together, and then think of what you do, who you need to call in the emergency. And if you're by the coast, you want to call 999 or 112 like you would in the event of the police or the fire or the ambulances, but ask for the Coast Guard. If you actually fell in the water, our advice is float. Do whatever you can to try and stay afloat. Don't panic. And that is the most important message what we will give you today is thrashing around increases your chances of sinking and getting tired. Trying your best to float, floating on your back could save your life. And the last thing to bear in mind with beaches is something that a lot of people forget is something called a rip current. And this is something that has been kind of highlighted as one of the biggest dangers of beaches. And of the 115 people that died at beaches last year, we think that actually 70 of them had been involved in a situation involving a rip current. And a rip current is essentially just an area where the water that has been washed onto the beach flows back out to sea. And this is usually a lot faster and a lot more aggressive than just normal tidal kind of flow. And this is something that can result in you getting swept out to sea where you didn't realize that was the case. They're not always in the same place. They move along the coast, and you'll see that there are a few little rip currents where this water is receding here. So like these white bits where you can see that something is pulled out. That's what a rip current looks like. Often it's really hard to identify, but if you ever find yourself in a rip current, we recommend you swim parallel. So don't try and swim forwards because you'll be going against the current. Swim sideways and you'll try and escape the rip current that way. And as you can see here, this is something that you want to look out for, something where you can see water being pulled out into the sea. And these are really hard to spot. So if you do find yourself on a beach and you find yourself in a rip current, just swim sideways. Don't try and swim back to the coast straight away. And they are quite hard to spot, as I said. That is something to bear in mind. So this is why we recommend swimming at a lifeguarded beach, because lifeguards are trained to spot these rip currents when they like patrol beaches. And then, again, more pictures. So this is a video, which I think we just about have time for, which shows a dye release experiment. So this is like water that someone's popped dye into. And as you watch this dye, you can see how it's swept away by the rip current over time. So initially, imagine this being a person, you're just in the water, there's a little bit of tidal kind of pull, and over time, you'll notice this dye is slowly being swept out to sea. And you may not notice this at first, especially if you're on like a flotation, kind of like a little like inflatable boat or anything like that, but this can really pull you far out to sea and it can cause a lot more problems and end up resulting in drowning. So the last thing is longshore currents. These things flow along beaches as well, and they're very similar to riptides, but they can carry you away from the beach from where you were. So imagine you went out to have a little swim and you go out maybe 100 yards, or like about 20, 30 meters. And then you could actually be pulled along the side of the beach to a point that you didn't go in from. And this can sometimes lead to you getting trapped in some rocks or somewhere that is a little bit less safe. And the last thing to bear in mind if you're going to the beach this summer is tides. Tides come in and out depending on the moon cycle. They are coming in and out all the time, and they just go through this normal cycle. You can check tide times online, but effectively just bear in mind that sometimes you can find yourself in very difficult situations based on the tide coming in or out. Let's say you sat down on the beach, you might notice that by a couple of hours later, you are now swimming instead of sitting. And that's something to be careful of, but also tides being pulled out. As you're trying to swim or sit on an inflatable and you want to stay in the water, you can find yourself a lot further from where you entered the water in the first place. So just bear that in mind this summer. And usually you have 2 high tides and 2 low tides that change every day. And bear in mind that you can get cut off for some beach entrances and exits because of the tide. So most lifeguarded beaches, you will find there's a few different types of flag or marker. One of the things that you want to look out for is the offshore winds. So I don't know how many of you are interested in sailing or canoeing or kayaking, but all of these things are impacted by the wind and the wind direction. The wind can blow people on inflatables out to sea, and also can cause something called surface chop, which is like a tidal, it looks like a tide, but it's just basically a rough sea. And this can cause you a lot more problems, especially if you're on a canoe or kayak, and cause you to capsize, which can result you getting trapped out in the water. And all these lifeguarded beaches have these orange windsocks, which are worth looking out for. I think I have a slide which has all the slides, all the flags. Yes. So when you're at the beach this summer, or even at some of the lakes, you will find there will be some different flags to watch out for. And these are really, really important. If you take nothing away from this presentation today, make sure you take away what these flags mean, because these flags could save your life. A red and yellow flag indicates that a lifeguard is patrolling the beach, or there's a lifeguard on the beach. And this is usually where you want to swim, between the red and yellow flags. A red flag means the water is not safe to swim in today. Do not swim or enter the water. And you might notice this on the beach, especially when there's a lot of wind or when the tide is really high, or whether the current is really strong on the longshore currents. Black and white flags mean that it's safe for like water sports, but not necessarily safe to swim. So bear in mind that this is a flag for people who want to do motorboating, sailing, canoeing and kayaking. But be careful that these places are usually not safe to swim for the likes of you and me. And also the orange wind socks know the wind direction. And this is important whether you're swimming or doing any water sports this summer. Okay, so we want to encourage you to go to the beach this summer. Go, have fun, enjoy the open water, enjoy the safety of most beaches, but bear in mind that some places can be dangerous. If you're planning on doing something at the beach, if you're thinking of taking an inflatable, just create a checklist of the activity you want to do, and then just think about the dangers or have a chat with your parents about what could be dangerous about the activities you want to do. And that's so important, and could save your life in this summer. And when you're in inland waters, things to watch out for are locks, weirs, and currents. So these are things that you may have seen when you're walking along the river or walking near the river, but bear in mind that these can be really dangerous, especially locks where boats are coming in and out of and they're changing their water level. These are used to control the flow of the water in the river, but are often opening and closing. Definitely don't swim anywhere near these because you can get trapped and they can be really dangerous. Weirs are like mini waterfalls. You definitely might have seen some. There's definitely a few near Slough. And weirs can be really, really dangerous, especially if you're swimming or if you're going on a canoe or kayak, because you can end up going down them. And they are very fast flowing often. And then just generally watching out for currents. And this is regardless of whatever water sports you're doing. I would very much recommend not swimming alone, not swimming in any other capacity other than with a organized group or with a lot of water safety in place if you're going to any of these rivers or any of these open water locations. They're generally not considered safe unless they've got a very clear designation that it's safe to swim. And so I'm going to actually pass over to Nick for the next part. So this is kind of learning how to help and how to get involved with the Royal Life Saving Society. So if you do find yourself or notice someone drowning, don't be a hero. Just call 999 or 112 and ask for fire and rescue if you're inland, or the Coast Guard. And these guys are trained to help. Don't jump in, don't rescue anybody. You're not trained, and this could cause you to get into a lot more difficulty. And this is something to bear in mind. And this is something that we recommend strongly. So how do we get involved? And I apologize, Nick, I think I'm going to have to control the screen because my computer won't let you control it.
Fair enough. Okay, thank you. Do you want to move on to the next slide, Barwick? So if you like what you heard today and you want to learn a bit more and get some sort of formal training, your local club is Windsor Lifeguard Club. We train, our pool slide training is based in Old Windsor, and we also have a base down by the river in Windsor that we go to in the summer. We are at a club that's affiliated with the Royal Life Saving Society, and we teach the Royal Life Saving Society's syllabus. The things that we teach is how to stay safe in and around water. In the event that you need to, we shall train you how to properly rescue people from the water if it's safe to do so. I say our training takes place in pools on the river, and we also use rescue boats to do some training as well. One of the things that the club also does is we, for the Duke of Edinburgh Award, you can do your physical and skill section with us. And also with more training, you can also do your volunteering with us to help with our younger members. A lot of universities, if you end up going on to university, a lot of universities have life-saving clubs. We also find that quite a few of our members become qualified lifeguards themselves, and they spend their time working either in hotels, leisure centres, places like Legoland, Thorpe Park, basically anywhere that has water. The companies need lifeguards, so they're always looking and recruiting people. I know places like Legoland and Thorpe Park, they have huge recruiting campaigns every year for lifeguards. Next, please. Okay, this is just a quick slide. This is our rookie section. It's showing them how to enter the water safely. If you're going into the water to help rescue someone, the likelihood is that the water won't be as clear as that. So you need to enter the water safely because you don't want to become a casualty yourself. So one of the things that we do is we train people on how to enter the water safely. We also teach people rope throwing skills. What we do, we encourage people, if at all possible, not to enter the water because you can quickly become a casualty yourself. So if you notice, if you walk along down by the river, there will be life buoys, ropes, and things like that that you can use as aids to rescue someone. So we teach you. Throwing a rope sounds quite easy, but when you're panicked and someone's life may be in your hands, it's a lot harder than you think. So we teach you how to do it without panicking. Thank you. Okay, so you're walking down the river with your friends. One of your friends trips, falls over, becomes unconscious, they fall into the river. You're the only people around that can help. So what we also do is we teach you how to safely recover a casualty from the water, and so saving their lives. Okay, thank you. Every year we have an award ceremony. We do run for our rookie section. It's our Rookie Lifeguard Award, but for guys of your age, it's our Survive and Save Award, which is bronze, silver, and gold. And we have a couple of other awards as well that we give out to members of the club. So this is just celebrating the achievements from the year. Okay. I say some of our seniors help our rookie section on an evening, and either just because they want to or because they're defending for volunteering or something like that. But it helps us to have extra eyes around the place and also supporting the training that we're delivering to our rookie section, so you can get involved in that also. So we also go down by the river. We tend to go down there in the summer months when the water is a bit cooler. You may think, yuck, going in the Thames is dirty, but actually I think the Thames at the moment it's never been cleaner, and it is perfectly safe to go in the river. We don't recommend that you actually drink the water whilst you're in there, but it is perfectly safe to swim in there in an environment that is controlled. As you can see, the top left and top right photos, we've got one of our patrol boats in the water when we've got people in the water, because people on the river don't tend to observe what's around them, so we have to protect our swimmers. And we also do some kayaking on an evening as well around the river. Next. One of the things that we also do is we run patrols. You get swimming clubs and things like that. They'll do open water river swimming on the Thames. And again, they need some protection from other boat users, or if one of their swimmers gets into trouble, then we can rescue them. We have a couple of different boats that we use depending on what type of patrols that we're doing. And we do encourage our senior members to get involved in the river patrols as well. It's good fun, and it's very, very worthwhile, and it's needed. Okay, and just thank you for joining us today for this presentation. I hope that you've enjoyed it and you've learned something from it. If you do want to learn more or want to become involved further, that's our web address there and our email address. We do offer a trial session. We appreciate that you may come down for a couple of weeks and it's just not for you, so we do offer a trial session. But yes, we're hoping to restart the club in mid-September. We're not running at the moment because of COVID, but we're looking to restart in September, which will probably matching with your start of your new school year. Thank you.
I very much recommend getting involved. It's really great fun.
Thank you, Bhavik. Thank you, Nick. That was really insightful. I kind of learnt what a rip current is. I didn't know what that was before. So you've educated me, and I'm sure you've educated a lot of our year 8s from the Langley Academy and those attending from other schools in the Thames Valley Learning Partnership. If we want to stop the screen share now, I'll just have a quick little look. If there are any questions that any of your students have, please do feel free now, teachers, to put them in the Q&A box below while we give people a chance, because we've got a few minutes left to kind of put in any questions. I just wanted to ask about, if students or anyone, even parents, etc., if they were having a few drinks, for example, in terms of alcohol, does that affect someone's ability to kind of judge the water, or what should you do if you're drunk in terms of entering the water? Should you just avoid it completely?
Absolutely. So we have a campaign every year called the Don't Drink and Drown campaign, and it's mostly targeted at kind of university students, and we usually partner up with a lot of pubs and restaurants that are near rivers to try and deliver the message. But we really, really recommend against entering the water at all when you're drunk. This is something that is super dangerous because of a couple of reasons. Firstly, when you're drunk or impaired, it's not easy to have the same level of coordination. You don't have the right level of judgment as well. So sometimes where you think when someone's sober, it's, you can assess whether something is somewhere is safe to enter or exit from. Whereas when you're impaired, it's a lot harder to actually make those assessments. But also just generally the coordination and being able to swim and kind of move your limbs the way you normally would expect to. It's a lot harder after a few drinks. So we generally avoid, we say that don't enter the water ever whilst drunk. And if you do ever notice that someone who is drunk has fallen in, then instantly I would recommend calling for the emergency services, because they most likely will need rescuing.
Wonderful, thank you. So we're coming up to the end of the event now, and I can't see any additional questions. If we do get any additional questions, are you okay if I send those over to you?
Absolutely.
Yeah, definitely.
Wonderful, thank you. So it's just this opportunity just to thank you both again. Thanks to Lily as well for helping to organise this event and for doing the opening introduction of the contacting yourselves. And thank you also to the teachers at Langley Academy for helping to make this event possible.